All right, so thank you so much for coming here and spending time with us and with this ecosystem I love so much. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll jump right into it. I wanted to ask you a question. So you know that the Israeli office really specialized in working with what we call startups, digital natives, tech companies. And when we work with them, we are taking them through a journey. And I really wanted your point of view on what would it take for a disruptor company, many in this room and in the Israeli ecosystem, to go through the process of becoming the next big global company like Airbnb, like Facebook. What would it take to get us there?
That's a great question. I want to start with probably some observational context. Many of the disruptors that I have heard about in Israel or that I've met around the world are exceptional and sometimes the most sophisticated performance marketers that we have on the platform. The reason why that's important is because usually a performance marketer or a disruptor is going to start with really focusing on the install base, growing users, growing your first-time buyers, really focused on lowering that cost per acquisition. But if the goal is to ultimately be the next Airbnb or to be the next Netflix or to be the next Facebook, the journey changes and evolves, and those metrics evolve as you become a bigger company. You start to be thinking about lifetime value. You start to think about ROI. You start to think about how you drive awareness. All things that are focused on building a really special and unique brand, a brand for consumers where there is meaningful connection. So the work that we do with Netflix and the work that we do with Airbnb is about crystallizing and creating that connection between consumers and that brand in the most meaningful way that is extremely purpose-driven.
Cool. So, you know, thinking about that, many times I've been being asked in Israel by traditional businesses, local traditional businesses in Israel, what they can learn from startups, from the disruptors in Israel, to become more relevant. And I actually want to reverse the question, ask it in the opposite way. What do you think that the disruptor ecosystem in general and in Israel specifically can learn from the traditional businesses? So not looking at Netflix, but looking at Coca-Cola and Procter & Gamble. What can we learn from them?
Well, first, there's...
What should we learn from them even more so?
There's so much that they can learn from you. I mean, that is absolutely acknowledged, and that is where we spend a lot of our time. But I completely agree that there is so much that disruptors and digital native companies can learn from them. And I would probably focus it on 3 different areas. The first one is that laser focus on consumers, and I'll dive a little bit deeper into that. The second one is really great storytelling and really designing beautiful creative that brings that consumer in. And then the third area is really thinking differently about how you build measurement systems over the course of time to be able to be more predictive in terms of your business and understand the value of that relationship between your brand and your consumer. So if you focus on the consumer for a moment, the ability for brands, Coca-Cola, Mars Wrigley, Procter & Gamble, the research and the time and attention that they pay on the consumer, understanding where the consumer is headed, and understanding the relationship between the brand and the consumer is critically important, and also how they build out need states and develop products for the future in order to future-proof their brands. The second thing I would say in terms of storytelling, so this really gets to the art and science of creativity. And most disruptors tend to think about creative or storytelling as pushing it over to the person who designs the user experience or the UI experience. And creativity is so much more than that, in particular on a mobile device where attention is much more focused, but at the same time, you're moving through your feed at a much faster pace. So creativity and storytelling today in a mobile-first world has to be about thumb-stopping creative, and that requires very unique techniques that bringing an in-house creative or working with a creative agency can really help to optimize your business as a whole, and that is certainly what a lot of these larger companies can do. And the last piece I would say is around measurement. The consumer journey now is non-linear. It is so different than it has been in the last 100 years. And in particular, what's important there is that you're not just optimizing or measuring for short-term growth, but you're also measuring for value over the course of time, or lifetime value. And the reason why, and we've had this conversation off stage a bit, the reason why this is so important is that the historical proxies, things like cookies, things like last click, that used to exist in the past no longer work when you have a nonlinear consumer journey, and no longer work ultimately when you are having a world where people are spending more time than ever on mobile. And so these companies are really pushing towards trying to understand how do they leverage their historical market mix models, and then how do they think more so about the future generation of measurement as a whole.
So that's the traditional, and you know, disruptor and tech companies are usually very, very data driven. And we tend to think that because we are so good with data, we cracked what measurement needs to look like. But what do you think, looking at us, how good are we really doing?
Look, you told me that Israelis like honesty, so I will be completely honest. Don't find me afterwards if you don't like my answer. But no, I don't think that, that you guys are there yet. And I think this is an area of opportunity for all companies, both the traditional companies that have been on this journey a bit longer, but also for every single person in this room to crack the code on measurement, to crack the code on multi-touch attribution, to understand which channels are really both creating that value and creating that equity for your brand, and at the same time are being able to drive real business outcomes, whether it's about sales, getting product off shelf, moving for better distribution, getting butts in seats, or it moves all the way over to changing perceptions for brands, all the way through to really thinking about how you reach and scale for audiences today. So the emphasis on multi-touch attribution, I think, is probably more important than ever before. And it's a primary problem that we are also trying to solve, being laser focused on wanting to ensure that we are in the business of helping to grow all of your businesses today.
So I'll just probably add to that that when I'm thinking about the Israeli ecosystem, almost all startups, when moving to scale after finishing the product, you know, beta, alpha, launching the product, they are going global very, very fast. And one of the things that is really important when comparing to local businesses elsewhere is that when a startup in Israel is trying to build his presence in the US, he doesn't have the leverage that an American company has, knowing the ecosystem or knowing the market. And that makes data and measurement even more important. We need to understand that getting that right, and I agree, I don't think that we are there yet. I think it's a big challenge, but I don't think that we are there yet, is going to be critical for global expansion.
I completely agree with you there. And to add on to that, when you look at consumer trends and you look at where the global economy is going over the course of the next 5 years, the consumer spending economy will actually increase by 75% over the next 5 years, but that's going to be concentrated in high growth markets, and in particular in the urban middle class. And so if you think about some of these traditional companies, they are not necessarily focusing their energy and their time and their attention there, but that is absolutely an opportunity for disruptors to both understand the markets that you are delivering cross-border trade to right now, but then really thinking about how do you create relevancy and how do you create a connection in the places and spaces in the world that will become sources of economic power. Is it okay if I ask you a question? Because we only got a little more time left. Okay. Especially, I think it's important for this audience in particular to understand this. So one of the things I have found to be really special about the office that you lead is how focused you are on disruptors, on digital natives, and in particular, you are the only office that specializes in support of these types of clients, which is incredibly, incredibly cool. And with that, you have you've created this momentum and power around supporting the startup nation that is Israel today. So I wanted to just get a little bit of your thinking on where do you feel like the ecosystem in Israel will go over the course of the next 5 to 7 years as we sort of think about that space and time.
So in Israel, we don't think 5, 10 years. maybe it's something we should start to, but
with real-time feedback happening on my question.
Exactly. We think 3 years is going to be very strategic thinking, which is probably one of the important points to talk about. So I think, Sarah, that in Israel, what happened, which we should all be very, very proud of, is that the Israeli ecosystem in the last, especially on the internet side, in the last 10 or 20 years, almost cracked the playbook of building startups. We have that playbook that allows the ecosystem to create and generate new disruptors. And we have the supporting system for that. So the VCs, incubator, accelerator, you name it, whatever name exists, we have in Israel, angel investors. So all the supporting system of the surrounding to make that happen, to inject knowledge or capability into that playbook. So we have a playbook to build startups. I hope that in the next 3 years, so we'll do it faster than 5 and 10, we will build that playbook, or we will add another chapter to the playbook on cracking the journey to build consumer and customer-centric businesses. So to take the technology and add another layer on it, which I think that today, we have few companies in Israel that do extremely well, but this is not the muscle that we have. This is not what we are really, really good at. This is definitely still not a playbook. And to figure out and to crack, what does it mean to build a consumer-centric company? And when I say consumer, I mean B2C and B2B. What does it mean to build a company that can become the next global consumer business? And if it's only going to be about disruption, it's not going to happen. If it's only going to be a tech play or product game, it's not going to happen. We need to figure out how to make disruptors companies. More strategic thinking, absolutely. I think that figuring out how you, and you talked about it before really, really well, how you take the engagement, the lifetime value, understanding who are the valuable customers and understanding how to bring them and understanding how to make sure that they engage and that they continue to be served by you. And understanding how you build something that people recognize and know and remember for many, many years. So hopefully that will be the journey in the next 3 years for us in Israel. So before we end, I thought that we will take this opportunity and get to know someone I really appreciate in the company who is tremendously supporting offices around the world and for the Israeli ecosystem to get to know you, Sarah, a bit well. So I'm going to ask you a few questions, fast and honest, because it's Israel. So fast and honest. Here it goes. Thailand or Barcelona?
Thailand.
All right. Sweet or salty?
Sweet.
Classical music or rock?
Classical music. I'm classically trained in opera.
You are?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
Well, I'm going
I will happily sing for everyone
after
the conference.
Android or iOS?
We can finish and I will sing.
This is going to be
I will happily sing.
Yeah. Opera later. So Android or iOS?
Say that one more time.
Android or iOS?
Ah. Yes. Pass. Pass on that one.
We have journalism.
We're gonna pass.
You'll pass. All right. I get you. Books or Kindle?
Books.
Sleep or workout?
I'm gonna go with workout, but I have a 3 and a 5-year-old, and there was definitely recent years where that answer would have been sleep.
So The Good Wife or Game of Thrones?
Neither. Billions. Anyone watch Billions? It is a fantastic show. Ah, so good.
You want your kids to become more polite or rude?
My best friend from the first day of college taught me this fantastic word, which I think everyone will recognize here, which is chutzpah. So that's what I would like my children to have.
Ah, cool.
It's a nice balance.
Come to Israel.
I will be there.
Yeah. In stores or e-commerce?
E-com.
Cool. I'm with you. Now it's going to be a hard one. New York or Tel Aviv?
Well, I've never been to Tel Aviv, but I am, as you know, I'm going in November, so I will refrain from answering the question.
We'll make you answer it in your visit.
Exactly.
And last, 2017 or 2017?
Both. I appreciate today, but I am extremely optimistic about the future.
Yeah. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm looking forward for the Israeli trip.